everyone, and welcome to my podcast lesson on Teaching for Joy and Justice, Chapter 7, Letting Go of Grades. Today I am going to be reading you some of my notes from the chapter. One of the first things that Christensen talks about in the chapter is that grading should match the classroom environment or the pedagogy of the classroom. She states that it's more important for students to know that the work that they're doing is important and it's meaningful to them in order for them to justify spending that kind of time on it. She also mentions that it's the big ideas that matter. So if students are exploring these really big, important type of social justice issues that are actually relevant in their lives and important to them, they'll find stories that they want to tell from those experiences. So for example, she talked about a boy in class who found the freedom to write about fitting in and his experience in the foster care system because of the openness of an assignment that she created surrounding poverty and acceptance. She also mentions that students foster a more caring relationship with their work when their grades are not attached to it, but instead she offers meaningful conversations about the actual content of the papers and encourages her students to go back and make certain revisions or like restructuring requests or things like that to foster a type of collaborative experience where students actually want to go back and change something instead of feeling bad about not doing well on the paper. They see what they need to correct and then they can go back and take that opportunity. Next, Christensen was talking about how grades favor students who already know what is being taught, or if they have a very strong background in reading or writing or some of these fundamental skills, they're likely to do better than students who don't. So anyone who doesn't have those skills is being punished by that grading system because it was against them from the start. So she sort of talks about how it's our job to teach students those necessary skills for reading and writing and not to penalize them for not knowing those skills. So grading systems are set up to sort of judge students' work rather than motivate them to improve their work if there are corrections that are required. So like Dr. E always says, the pre-writing stage is where students should be spending the most time because it's where they'll learn those skills and get the opportunity to improve them. So drafts and grades sort of create a sense of task completion anxiety for students sometimes because it encourages them to rush their work so they can move on to the next part without actually focusing on the improvement of those individual skills. But Christian says that she combats this by having students rework their papers until they meet a draft criteria or a finished paper criteria. So it's not like by a due date, but instead they turn their papers in and then they might get it back for certain revisions and they might not. But it allows every student to receive full points by putting in the work. And once they meet the specific criteria, it gives her an opportunity to fully teach each of those necessary reading and writing skills at a more individualized pace for each student. One of her students framed this type of grading system as, sorry about my cat. One student framed the grading system as a conversation, not a competition, because all students were receiving feedback to improve their work, instead of a specific letter grade, which would determine how good or bad they did at a certain skill. So it seems like students also really liked this idea because it's not telling them they're really good or they're really bad at something, but instead it's actually concerning, it's actually concerning the student with, oh my goodness, Sadie, shush. It's actually concerning the teacher with the student's work and allows students to correct their mistakes instead of just receiving a bad grade and being forced to move on from it. And then lastly, she includes a sample grading policy that accounts for basic concepts, it accounts for basic concepts, daily work, participation, homework, difficulty, and extensions. The policy sample is a student handout that goes over her expectations and explains her kind of ideology, and the way that she grades and how the students will be graded in each individual task as well. But it sort of outlines the expectations of the class and gives students a chance to understand what kind of effort they'll need to put in. It is very high expectations if you get a chance to look over it on page 276. But yeah, that is Christensen's grading in a nutshell. Thank you so much for listening.